No matter who you vote for, you get John McCain. No matter who you feel. So no matter what Donald Trump said on that debate stage and how they lied. Now Trump is the one lying to you to start a war with Iran.
So recently, Jimmy Dore had a podcast where he talks about how war propaganda as it relates to Iran is off the charts because the U.S. has joined this as a direct belligerent, bombing Iran. And we sure did go from Israel's doing this on their own to regime change is a good thing within the span of 24 hours. And he talks about how Trump and Tulsi are both in on it. So let's watch, let's respond. Please like the video and subscribe to the channel.
America has intelligence that America has intelligence, not our own intelligence, but they have lies fed to them by Israel. That's the new intelligence, in case you don't know. That's what she's referring to there. We have intelligence. That's not intelligence. That's propaganda that the Mossad and Israel told some advisors to President Trump. So I just want to remind people, this is what Tulsi Gabbard used to say before she joined Trump's team and switched everything she was saying. Here.
President Trump says that he doesn't want war with Iran, but that's exactly what he wants. Because that's exactly what Saudi Arabia, Netanyahu, Al-Qaeda, Bolton, Haley, and other neocons and neolibs want. That's what he puts first, not America.
Do you remember? That was Tulsi in 2020.
No, I don't remember. No, I don't.
Do you remember? So that's why she had my support. That's why I supported her when she ran for president, because she told the truth about Syria. She told the truth about the wars in the Middle East, regime change wars, and she was against them. In fact, here she is testifying just a few weeks, a month or so ago in Congress, and she's going to tell you that Iran does not have a nuclear bomb. It's their assessment, the intelligence community's assessment here.
Iran continues to seek expansion of its influence in the Middle East, despite the degradation to its proxies and defenses during the Gaza conflict. Iran has developed and maintains ballistic missiles, cruise missiles, and UAVs, including systems capable of striking U.S. targets and allies in the region.
Yeah, U.S. targets. You know why? Because we have 1 million military bases surrounding Iran. That's why.
That's exactly why, and it's so ironic. This argument comes down to, well, they put their country way too close to all of our U.S. military bases. No, the U.S. government is engaged in empire building, and that's why it has bases all around the world. They shouldn't be there in the first place, and that's what's so tragic here is if our troops get harmed, attacked, or subjected to an attack by a false flag and draw the U.S. into this war, it's going to be expansive, potentially leading to boots on the ground in an Afghan or Iraqi-style 20-year occupation. It would be disastrous. Jimmy is exactly right here.
It would be like if Iran had bases in Toronto, and we were like, "Hey, the United," that's what we're doing to them.
Yeah.
If Iran had military bases in Juarez and Mexico and Toronto and Vancouver and Cuba, that's what it would be like.
Yeah, this is the empire builder state of mind, this mentality that, you know, it's unacceptable for Iran to be able to defend itself, but they put their country way too close to our military bases. This is just an absurd line of reasoning, and it really highlights the extent to which getting involved in this war in the first place is so disastrous, especially because of the influence of the Israel lobby and the military-industrial complex and the neocons that Trump dragged over the coals and berated and denounced in the run-up to his candidacy and his presidency.
That's what we have surrounding, and more, way more.
They get bombed all the time in various things, but they only tell you about it when it serves their interest to expand a conflict.
Right.
That just happened under Biden, and they try to tamp it down that how many service people died. Remember that?
Yes.
Or Syria? So that, yeah.
Okay, here we go.
Iran has shown a willingness to use these weapons, including during a 2020 attack on U.S. forces in Iraq and in attacks against Israel in April and October 2024. Iran's cyber operations and capabilities also present a serious threat to U.S. networks and data. The IC continues to assess that Iran is not building a nuclear weapon.
Iran is not building a nuclear weapon. That's, she said, the IC, meaning the intelligence community, which she is the head of.
Yeah.
Director of National Intelligence. We have assessed they're not building a nuclear bomb. We're not. That's what we've assessed. They're not. They're not.
Jimmy.
They're not. Hang on.
And Supreme Leader Khamenei has not authorized the nuclear weapons program that he suspended in 2003.
That is even more consequential. So not only did this happen 2 months ago, that she said in her annual threat report, threat summary, that they don't have a nuclear weapon and there's no evidence they ever reconstituted that program. Now, just a day before the U.S. bombings happened, she took to Twitter and all of a sudden said, you know, they're weeks away probably from acquiring a nuclear weapon. It's almost impossible for both of those statements to exist. It seems to at least contradict, and it really seems like she could be compromised here. The Israel lobby got to her. It's not like she hasn't been very pro-Israel. She actually has. And don't get me wrong, she is much better on foreign policy than many members of Trump's cabinet. She dared to tell the truth about Syria, and that lost her credibility with, you know, the Democratic establishment that did everything they could to undermine her, you know, campaign for president. But it really seems like she has turned on this and really jumped behind the Trump administration and the propaganda they're using to sell this. It was, you know, Israel's doing this at first. We bombed 3 nuclear sites and that's a good thing too. Regime change is good. And this turnabout only took a few weeks. It really is crazy. We're seeing the 2003 playbook come out once again. You hear about sleeper cells now, Iranian sleeper cells. Well, I think that was played out back in 2003, let alone 2025.
So the guy who's leading the country suspended their march to get a nuclear bomb in 2003, and her own assessment is that he has not changed that. They've suspended they're not doing that. Let me play it for you again.
Supreme Leader Khamenei has not authorized the nuclear weapons program that he suspended in 2003. The IC continues to monitor closely if Tehran decides to reauthorize its nuclear weapons program.
But they haven't. So the Ayatollah is against having a nuclear weapon in Iran. So these are the things they don't tell you. Well, she told you there. She told you there, and Trump got upset.
And if anything, now they're incentivized to fast track a nuclear weapon because of what the U.S. has done and what Israel has done. I would, if I was in control of that regime, I would want to be more like North Korea right now than Gaddafi in Libya, where he got overthrown and couped and brutalized in his murder in the most murderous fashion imaginable, and North Korea has a regime with nukes and regime changes essentially off the table. So what the U.S. has done has not only violated what they thought to be their premise by encouraging Iran now to get a nuke, but I don't think they had a nuke to begin with. It didn't seem to be the case. She said weeks away now, a few days ago. That's more radical than even Netanyahu has said. And he said they're weeks, months, days away. Since 1992, there's about 30 examples of him saying that they have a nuclear weapon, or they're about to acquire a nuclear weapon, I should say. Since I was a child, Netanyahu's been saying that Iran is just steps away from getting a nuclear weapon. This is war propaganda. Nothing more, nothing less. We saw it all before.
And then so people were saying, look at what she said, just because Trump came out and said, no, we've got new intelligence. But they don't have new intelligence. What they have is lies from the Mossad. So Israel we're going to get to that. So they don't have any new intelligence. This is weapons of mass destruction in Iraq all over again, 100%, because the head of the intelligence community in the United States just told you and told Congress that the head of Iran stopped their nuclear program in 2003, and he has not reauthorized starting it again.
Yeah, so to believe her on both accounts is like saying, like the day after she delivered this threat assessment, they went into overdrive. They started their weapons program back up that there was no evidence that they ever did since 2003, fast-track a nuclear weapon, and now they're just on the verge of having it. It just doesn't comport with reality. This seems timed to coincide with the propaganda effort that is being used to sell this war. You're getting sold a war just like you were in 2002 and 2003. And guess what? This one is also on behalf of the Israel lobby and Netanyahu, who wanted both regime change operations. And there were complicit Americans involved in that too, and certainly wanted it too. The Wolfowitzes, the Pearls, the Cheneys, the Bushes of the world, some of which are, cheering all of this on. Find me a 2016 Never Trumper that doesn't support what Trump is doing in the Middle East. This is the neocon playbook through and through.
They're not doing that. They're not doing that. So they're just finding a lie that they can hoodwink enough suckers in the United States to go along with, people who pledge loyalty to Trump, which is ridiculous. You should pledging loyalty to a politician makes you a chump and a cult.
That's so true. And, I was so against some of the mentality that the liberals had in the United States about MAGA's just, a cult, and, they just follow whatever their leader says. And I think that is partially confirmed by this. I hate to say, much of the MAGA faithful is now trying to sell this thing. You see people back on Twitter that opposed Biden's targeted bombings in Iran now full bore in support of this thing, saying it's a good thing, saying, Trump was just trolling. They moved the goalpost to that, or they moved to the goalpost to, when he's talking about regime change, he's not just talking about organic internal regime change, stuff like that. But what does give me the white pill moment, the source of hope, is that I saw Charlie Kirk's poll on this, and 75% of his audience does not agree with these strikes or U.S. intervention in Iran. And that's his audience and people that share it. So that gives me some hope. I think there is some credence to, the cult phenomenon of MAGA, but it's not the Trump coalition. It's mostly his most zealous supporters that will just, follow him like a Pied Piper.
You pledge loyalty to the ideas that politician is pushing or espousing, the policies. I used to support the policies that I was supporting Tulsi's policy of no regime change. And as soon as she flipped on that, I'm no longer supporting her. Same thing with Bernie Sanders. He was against corporate control of the Democratic Party and the warmongers who ran our party, the Democratic Party. At that time, I was a Democrat, and I supported his policy in that. I supported him and his policy. And as soon as he flipped on that and decided to support those same people who just cheated and lied to him, I stopped supporting Bernie Sanders. That's the logical course. So blind allegiance to a person, to a politician, is what they do in China, I thought. What they did in what they did in North Korea.
Yeah, exactly. Jimmy is right on the nail here. This is so accurate. Politics would be so more viable and logical and understandable if Americans were beholden to principles rather than tribes. I mean, compartmentalize individual issues and how people stand on them, and you can find an enormous amount of crossover. You'd be surprised, actually. On my channel, I feature a lot of left-wing dissidents that are really good on foreign policy, and I love them on foreign policy. I think they're heroic on that, like the Glenn Greenwalds and Aaron Mattei and Jeffrey Sachs to a degree. These guys are not anarcho-capitalists like I would prefer, but they're so good on these issues. And if we just created coalitions like that, we could actually do some damage to the war machine, I feel like. So I'm totally with Jimmy on this. Single issue coalitions are the way. Tribes are never the way.
Yeah, that's what we are.
So if you have blind allegiance to Trump, you're no better than the people you claim to hate. You are that thing.
I don't think people have blind allegiance to Trump like that. I think they really wanted to get that going. And if you go on X, you'll see a bunch of people and they'll say something so stupid like, are you still with Trump? We need a Broderick. Are you still with Trump? I am. Are you still MAGA?
No.
Why are you asking me that, bitch? Why don't you ask Trump that?
Yes,
his whole thing was, I'm with you.
Yeah.
Hillary's an idiot for I'm with her. I'm with you. So why are you asking me if I'm with Trump? That's 180 from his appeal.
Right. It was Hillary Clinton who said, I'm with her. Now you're saying, are you with Trump? That sounds like Hillary Clinton sycophants and cult members.
Yeah, that's right. But I'll be happy to say I've noticed, Steve Bannon and Tucker Carlson and Matt Walsh be really against this thing. Marjorie Taylor Greene is really against this thing. Massey, who did support Trump, despite getting dragged by him repeatedly for years and years and years, including before this last campaign, he still supported Trump, but he adamantly opposes this. So, there are parts of this coalition that are fracturing. This seems to be a schism, and I've said so many times in other videos that I've created on my channel that this is going to really jeopardize what Trump wants to do, his agenda. And I'm not beholden to it. In fact, I'm opposed to much of it, but it really has the ability to threaten that. I don't think he's going to get what he wants in terms of immigration or mass deportation or permanent protective tariffs after this. So much of that coalition will be fractured over starting a new war in the Middle East, which he campaigned vigorously against.
That's our business model of America. It's called being an influencer.
So when people called Tulsi out and said, look, your own testimony in front of Congress just 5 minutes ago, your assessment was that the Ayatollah had stopped their nuclear development program in 2003, and he hasn't reauthorized it. And then Trump went batshit on her, and she completely flipped. And then she says the dishonest media is intentionally taking my testimony out of context and spreading fake news as a way to manufacture division. America has intelligence that America has intelligence, not our own intelligence, but they have lies fed to them by Israel. That's the new intelligence, in case you don't know. That's what she's referring to there. We have intelligence. That's not intelligence. That's propaganda that the Mossad and Israel told some advisors to President Trump. And we're going to get to that story in a second.
Well, I'm with Jimmy in spirit here, but not even Mossad or Netanyahu is being this radical about how close that Iran is supposed to be to acquiring these weapons. Actually, a few days ago, Netanyahu was on an interview where he said, it could be about a year until they acquire one. And he's always lied about this, but he said a year, and Tulsi here is saying weeks. So she got compromised somehow. I don't know if it's, as Jimmy said, that Trump shook her down or something like that. Who knows? But somehow she changed her tune. This air of confidence in their ability to acquire this, it runs completely contrary to the spirit in which she delivered that testimony just 6 weeks ago.
And that Iran is at the point it can produce a nuclear weapon within weeks or months. Yeah, that's exactly what Benjamin Netanyahu has been saying since 1995. So that's the intelligence she's pretending that they have. So the most generous reading of what she's doing here is Tulsi's against this war, and she wants to make sure she stays inside the administration so she could argue against it. And if she leaves, it's going to be just nothing but people who are for this war.
Yeah, a lot of people are calling for her to resign. I don't know what I think about that. It's hard to know whether she should resign if she genuinely is against this war and just kind of falling in line and does want to try to exert influence that's good on foreign policy in other regards, or if she's just, she's been compromised by the deep state permanently, by the Israel lobby, by the military-industrial complex forever. It's hard for me to know, but I do think she is still, despite all this, and it's so absurd, she's still better than if you put Marco Rubio in that position, if you could put Mike Waltz in that position, if you put Mike Rogers, who was rumored to be in that position prior to her selection, that would be a disaster.
So that's the most generous reading you could give to this. Another reading is she just completely flipped because she doesn't want to lose her position. She completely flipped. That's another reading.
Know this term, right? The dialectic. Well, you just got dialectic.
You just got dialected.
Yeah, that's what it is. Top Gun came out how long? Oh, by the way, Syria, there were 2 earthquakes, weren't there, with a big famine?
Yes.
Those are 4.
So let me just, so Aaron Mate breaks down what Tulsi just said. Tulsi is now saying that America has intelligence that Iran is at the point it can produce a nuclear weapon within weeks to months if they decide to finalize the assembly. She did not say that in her March testimony shown below, right, which I just showed you. She didn't say that then.
Right.
I wonder why she didn't say that then. That's because it's not a U.S. intelligence conclusion, but intelligence provided by Israel. So she doesn't tell you that. So she's lying by omission. No U.S. intelligence assessment endorses the Israeli claim or the Israeli intelligence that Iran could produce a bomb within weeks. I've been told this by an insider source, and it's obvious from the way Tulsi words her statement below. If Israel tells America that Iran can produce a nuclear weapon within weeks, then yes, America now has that intelligence. That doesn't mean it's true, which it's not, or that America even believes it, which it doesn't. Moreover, let's pretend for a moment that is the Israeli lie of weeks, that they could have a bomb in weeks. Let's pretend it's correct. Note Tulsi's caveat, if. She's acknowledging that Iran has not decided to build a nuclear weapon. That's because Iran has said it doesn't want one and is willing to commit to that in a binding deal, the one they were negotiating until Trump and Israel sabotaged it, and not for the first time. So when Iran...
Yeah, this is correct. At one point, the U.S. delegation that was meeting with Iranians under the auspices of creating a negotiation like the JCPOA that would curtail the ability for Iran to develop a nuke, they'd have inspections, etc. Originally, the U.S. demand was no nuclear weapons program. Then at some point down the line, that commission was to stand on this absurd no nuclear enrichment, which is a total non-starter. It's a poison pill that was designed to squash any chance of this happening. And you saw Trump go on social media and say, well, Iran killed the deal. Iran killed the deal. Well, no. What you wanted when you turned from your initial statement about what you wanted would have been impossible for them to agree to, because it would shut down their entire nuclear energy program, which Iranians depend on. Their economic system depends on it.
Iran says it won't do is it. What Iran says is it won't do is compromise its sovereign right to peaceful enrichment and to self-defense. Trump and Israel insist, by contrast, on an unconditional surrender. Iran won't surrender, and the question of surrender actually applies internally. Beyond Trump and allied Israel firsters, Israel first, does the rest of America, from the Tulsi overseen intel community on down, do they want to surrender its sovereignty to Israel leaders and their pro-war lies? That's the paramount question in these dangerous days. Well, the answer is yes. They've done so. Trump has done so. Tulsi has done so. Hegseth has done so. They're all doing so. They're all giving up their sovereignty to Israel.
Yeah, Israel first, make Israel great again. And when Trump tweeted the whole regime change tweet, I almost didn't believe it. I had to actually check. I logged into Truth Social to see if that was actually him that tweeted, and he did. So we sure went from non-interventionist candidate to Iran can't get a nuclear bomb to, well, Israel's doing this on their own and that's fine, to, well, we might need to target some sites for bombing, to we just bombed some sites and it was good, to regime change is good. We went through that whole stretch in about 48 hours. And don't get me wrong, I think this was planned much longer than that. Trump actually was explicit in his 4-minute or so speech after the U.S. bombing run on Iran that he had been working closely with Netanyahu on this. So it seems like at least for a few days, there were also evacuation warnings and things like that in the days prior to this bombing that make it very clear that Trump was complicit. To what extent, he was duped is totally immaterial. He ultimately made the call that this was going to happen. You can see all the neocons gloating about it right now on social media. So that's just the truth. Mark Levin is more joyous than I've ever seen him in about 10 years because his neocon dream of regime change in Iran may be taking hold and root right now as we speak. But it's despotic and it's treacherous and it's a blight against the American spirit and our foreign policy.
It's an unconditional surrender to Israel. We'll do whatever you say, and we're doing it. So this is exactly the same. It's almost verbatim the same playbook that George Bush and Dick Cheney did around Iraq.
Yeah.
Donald Trump screamed about it on the debate stage at Jeb Bush. It's what started his movement. And here we are. He's doing the exact thing that he said we shouldn't do. That's how powerful the blackmail is that the Mossad has on our lawmakers. And according to Elon Musk, Donald Trump also. Elon Musk was the guy who tweeted that out.
Yeah, and it's hard to disagree. Jimmy's totally right about this. Trump's maybe best moment in his campaign, his first campaign, was on that South Carolina debate stage where he said, the Iraq war was disastrous. Jeb, you were disastrous. Your brother's policy was disastrous. They didn't have weapons of mass destruction. We don't need it. No more forever wars. That's what allowed Trump to rise in that nomination process and eventually acquire the nomination. It's so hard for people to believe this, but Jeb Bush prior to that moment was widely viewed as the front runner. If you can believe that. Yeah, please clap Jeb Bush. That's who was. But Trump's moment now seems to be betrayed. And it's Israel first to the core. It's something that the neocons always wanted. Mike Waltz, who he fired, always wanted this. Marco Rubio, historically a neocon, wanted this. And, I guess it's not difficult to see based on who paid for his campaign, who influences him, and who's in his cabinet. And it's not non-interventionists. It's not Ron Paulians. It's not Thomas Massey's. It's the neocons.
I didn't say that. And of course, there's credible testimony that Donald Trump did engage in illegal sex with underage people via Jeffrey Epstein. All I'm saying is it doesn't matter why Donald Trump is doing what he's doing as much as he's doing it.
Yeah.
He's doing it. He's doing this at the behest of Israel. There's no doubt about it. Iran doesn't have a nuclear weapon, isn't a threat to the United States. And if they ever talk about Iran striking American soldiers, it's because we have bases all around their country, and we've set the Middle East on fire. We're the ones, again. Okay.
Yeah, Jimmy is so right here. I think that he is totally on point. This is a disaster. This has sucked the U.S. into another Middle East war that could get escalated at any time. Like you said, there's lots of U.S. forces in the region. There's actually 45,000 or so if you include the contractors in that Gulf region there in the vicinity of Iran. Most of the bases are to the southwest, just off the coast of Iran, within striking distance. U.S. naval resources and fleet is in Bahrain or off the coast of Bahrain, and the U.S. has moved lots of resources and carrier battle groups into that vicinity. So what I fear most is a false flag attack. Israel has endless incentive to get the U.S. into this war now because it would further and advance the cause of regime change. Because right now there's no boots on the ground from a U.S. perspective. There might be special forces, probably so. But there's never been a historical case, and correct me if I'm wrong if you think in the comments, of a regime change operation conducted from one power to another that happens only from airstrikes or naval strikes. That doesn't happen. Regime change takes boots on the ground. Israel and Netanyahu want those boots to be American, not Israeli, by the way. They want us to fight this war for them. Even though Iran can't strike the U.S., they don't have a delivery system to strike U.S. proper at all. It's only our forces are there because of perilous foreign policy decisions, empire building, and, the quest for dominance, hegemony in the region. Pat Buchanan once said, you can't have a limited government and an unlimited empire, and that is so accurate. The U.S. tries to boast about having both, though it's obviously a gigantic oligarchic government that engages in empire building. And that is to our peril. That is to the peril of the American taxpayer. A lot of people don't realize that, but it impacts our economy, inflation. It's the reason why eggs cost so much at one point. It's not just eggs, it's materials and electronics and food, and all of those things have spiked upward because the U.S. finances it through the central bank by printing money, depreciating the value of remaining debt, which is a tax, and they don't even have to legislate that. So we're caught up in this whole thing, and it's already way too deep. I hope the U.S. can get out of it, but I'm not so sure yet or not. But I want to hear from what you guys think. Do you think that it's just destined to be escalated, that the U.S. will put boots on the ground, and that the U.S. will expand this war? Let me know in the comments below. Please like the video, subscribe to the channel, consider supporting me as a YouTube member or a Patreon patron to support the channel, and I'd really appreciate that, and bow to you. And until I see you guys next time, no more war, no more debt, no more inflation, and no more empire. Peace out, guys. I'll catch you in the next one.